So, hey everybody, how you doing? And welcome to another episode of In Conversation With. If you are joining us on Friday night over on the Azurish Live Twitch.tv channel, then thanks so much as usual for tuning in. Please do take part in the chat below. Don't forget to give the channel a follow. You'll get notified next time we go live with more content. Equally, if you are watching this on YouTube, playing catch-up, not a problem at all. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please don't forget, like the video, give us a subscribe. It's really appreciated. Okay, so my next guest this week on In Conversation With, she is an author, she's a public speaker, and she's currently helping so many businesses achieve that level of success in their digital transformation journeys at the moment. She's recently co-authored a book called Building a Digital Future, and I'm really excited that we're going to be discussing that and more in today's episode. So with that being said, I'm excited to welcome my next guest on In Conversation With as Lipi Sarkar. Hey Lipi, how you doing? Thanks for joining me.
Hi John, it's lovely to join you. Thank you for inviting me.
No, absolutely. Yeah, it's great. I know we had a brief chat a couple of weeks back now when I think I first saw that you co-authored this book, Building a Digital Future, and I'd noticed that you were doing some fantastic things in the world of digital transformation. So I know we had a brief chat, and I was kind of excited to call you onto one of these episodes and just really get a feel for where you're going. So before we get into all that great stuff, I don't know if you want to elaborate on the introduction, give yourself a little bit of an intro and let people know obviously who you are, what you're up to and what you're involved with at the moment.
Absolutely. Delighted to be part of your show. And I have been in the industry for about 20 years. I started with consulting in different areas, different industry, and then moved into, they started with very much in the technology, and then we moved up into the project management, program management side, and the delivery side of digital transformation. So I've worked with Big Four, I've worked with global consulting firm, and I have been responsible for leading the digital transformation for global rollouts. So that's me, and I was always passionate about writing some book one day, and when the opportunity came and COVID happened, unfortunately, lots of businesses happened, in a different condition, had to stop, have to wind down, and socializing were almost like zilch. So thought of, using that time to something more productive and writing a book, and that's how it happened.
No, absolutely. I think, it's so, COVID is probably responsible for so much negativity, but equally, I think it's probably fair to say that there's, certainly a lot of positivity that's come out of it. Both for individuals personally, like you say, you've got the time to focus your efforts and attentions on things like authoring a book. But for businesses, I suppose this has been that thrust into the digital age. I'm guessing like nobody ever foresaw, in terms of actually technically how do we as businesses now evolve and keep up with the challenges that we're faced with through COVID, but actually maybe setting us up for goodness in the future. I mean, what's your take on that? And maybe if we start on that whole thing around digital transformation, Lipi, what is digital transformation, and how does that kind of how do you describe that to customers that you deal with?
That's a very good question, John. In terms of digital transformation, we talk about, transforming a business. That's where the digital transformation comes through. And in terms of transforming the business, there are so many different elements and aspects that we need to consider apart from just the technology bit. And that's where I feel like we need to understand all the elements that is underpin the digital transformation bit. So in my book, I have covered in a graphical representation about how you can move from a traditional way to a transformed way of your business. You can do it with operational efficiency. You can do that. And also if the customer experience is in the target that you want to improve the customer experience in more transformed way. So you can start with thinking about bringing your digital assets in cloud. That's something you can do. You can transfer the assets into digital. Then that would be the stage one of digital transformation. Then you want to bring it to a different level and give a digital experience, whether it's internally to your employees, whether it's external customers involved to it. So again, that's the level 2, the digital experience, where you bring in the core information, the core business models in the digital experience. And finally, if you want to create a new business model, using the experience that you have now and also the assets that in the cloud, then you can go into creating new maturity model, creating new business model, and you can operate whether it's you want to target new customers, you want to market in a different sector, or market in a different different new land, basically. So that's where I would say the digital transformation level 3 comes in. Now, you can do it in an operational way, and what you want to talk about is understanding the digital transformation a little bit more. Is we have like the people, process, and technology as the 3 things that we need to think about. And overall, it's also the governance that sits on the top of it. So you have to think about how we are using the people, the workforce within the organization. Then what are the processes that we need to transform? Are we going to improve the processes where we are currently? And what are the improvements that we want to bring in? That's something about the process. And then the technology is, coding something, what you want as part of your processes. That technology becomes an enabler to that digital transformation. If you join these 3 dots, I would say that's where the digital transformation is. Creating new models.
Do you know, Lipi, just looking at this slide now, because this is something that you've pulled from your book, I'm assuming, now, in terms of trying to simplify what that process looks like. And I think, looking at lots of customers and lots of businesses as they currently are, I mean, just to try and relate what you just said now down to what it might mean from a technical perspective in terms of, people on the ground dealing with businesses, maybe not just technically, but business processes. So business, business processes, services that are offered. That 3-step process, so looking at digital assets, is really, I'm right in thinking, is that traditionally businesses are running on, platforms. Now, those platforms can be, traditional server hardware, infrastructure, SANs, networking, all of that good stuff that is currently how that business runs. And what we talk about with digital assets, do you mean like transforming what they've currently got?
Transforming the current platform to the cloud platform. So that could be one way of doing things. So because traditionally we were all like, as you said, on a particular platform, that's not a SaaS model. So you can bring it in the SaaS model, and whether it's your software, whether it's your infrastructure, you can have a managed infrastructure as well. So platform as a service, so you can bring all that, and infrastructure-wise, you can build that capability and move into the digital assets. That's where the level 1 would be.
So it's just about that first adoption of cloud services, and then looking at this model again, then moving it then to the digital experience. The next step up is taking what you've done and making it somehow better, in simplistic terms.
And bring in the core businesses in the digital experience, bring in the core businesses and do it slightly different, and give that digital experience to your customer, and so that the customer can interact with you through different channels. So that's the digital experience providing to the customers. That's level 2. And then the 3rd level is more about creating more maturity model, creating different model, using that experience and using that assets. That's level 3.
So this could be where businesses look to kind of differentiate themselves as, whatever their industry is or whatever their business model is using now these new cloud services to properly energize and take their business to the next level, I guess, is, when we look at something like that, true digital transformation is we are now using everything that the previous parts of this journey to really realize, technical advances and technical enablement of businesses in ways maybe they don't currently understand. Is that the way that you'd frame it, Lipi? Or
I would say many businesses have not even been into that right side of that graph. And they might be on their current platform, the on-prem platform as well. So in terms of moving, wherever they are in the industry or in the sector or in their journey, they can the strategy, they need to define a strategy in terms of where they want to move through, whether digital transformation is one of the key objectives, as one of the key goals within their strategy. They need to identify that. What are the cases? So I would say, like, identify the case, identify the drivers that you need to move into the digital transformation. Where do you want to move to? Once you have defined the strategy, and the strategy could be identifying the business drivers, identify the case for moving into the digital world, or providing a digital experience to the customers. Once you have identified that, then define a digital roadmap. And the roadmap could be based on, it's not one size fits all, because yes, we can identify the needs, we can identify the pain points of the organization, and based on that, define a digital roadmap that works for you. And whatever the targets you want to achieve, what are the goals, what are the priorities you want to define within your business, the digital roadmap will deliver those capabilities. Now,
yeah.
So using that framework, how you want to move step by step, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm with you, and it's great to kind of try and simplify it down in that kind of three-strand. I mean, looking at it and trying to understand how some businesses may view this whole, digital transformation journey. I think it's probably fair to say, is it not, that look, there's probably a lot of work involved here at some stage for somebody. I mean, what kind of blockers have you seen, Lipi, in terms of businesses kind of looking to adopt this strategy and go for that kind of that utopia of a complete digitally transformed company? If they're currently maybe a more traditional, and by traditional, I guess the way I view traditional is they're a business, they do X as their industry, they do something. They've got their own internal IT support, their own internal IT systems and processes and things like that. What kind of blockers have you seen, and what advice do you have for companies that want that utopia but kind of maybe don't know what that path may look like at the moment? Are there any kind of key call outs that you'd point towards?
You have touched upon a great point. In terms of IT, within the organization, they might be having a strategy about the security, the traditional model of running the business. Now, when we talk about moving to digital transformation, so we have to, bring that journey, uplift it to a level where, as an organization, where they want to achieve, where they want to go. So IT enablement with digital assets, moving into the platform. So I think the business is depending on different sectors. So as a blocker, I would say many organizations have seen, either in the public sector or maybe in the healthcare sector, I'm talking about 5 years back, and there was a point where about moving into cloud was a big debate. So, and it won't work through the IT security. It won't go through the security. But I think it has been with the maturity within the industry. I think we have moved forward quite a lot. And even though we are talking about now moving into cloud, but there might be internal security, that there are certain things that are allowed to in the cloud, and what level of information can be added into cloud, that is something that need to be defined, that need to be targeted. Open discussion need to happen before we move into that, embark on that digital transformation journey.
But I guess that's what you were alluding to earlier when you mentioned it's got to have that governance approach to it. Yeah. So there's certainly, I've certainly seen customers lift and shift assets and put them into a cloud platform. Yeah. What they're actually gaining from that might be some cost saving, might be this, that, and the other. But that really is that kind of phase one, isn't it? That okay, we're going to try and adopt some of the cloud, but like you say, that maturity and that realization of those benefits comes from understanding, you mentioned earlier, the governance that wraps around it. And I guess, you have those conversations. I mean, any gotchas on the governance side that you've come up against, and things you think businesses need to be aware of on that front, Lipi?
Yeah, governance, again, I mean, it could be on the processes, because or it could be on the technology. So let me take an example of the processes. If I'm talking about a global organization, then the processes might be a little bit fragmented in one part of in one country versus another country. Now, streamlining those processes and bringing to a common consensus of doing things in one way across different countries might be very difficult to achieve. But if we don't achieve that, that means that we are not reaching that kind of efficiency. So that's one way of targeting it, through the governance, in terms of having regular workshops and bringing that consensus in. The
Sure, yeah.
other one, I would say, John, it's also about bringing the people mindsets about the digital transformation, because there's a lot of background work that need to happen, preparing the organization, preparing people's mindset, because it's also about the benefit, but it's also about what is in it for me as an organization, as an employee. How will it deliver? What will it deliver for me? So unless we have this conversation as part of the change and transformation, it's very difficult to bring that the change and bring that user adoption. And so
Yeah, I completely agree with that point. Do you know what? I think that's a point that maybe lots of businesses maybe take for granted. Have you found that, Lipi, in terms of you just assume you employ technical people, they will just go and do what it is that needs to be done? But it's probably fair to say that's an understated thing that you really do need to put some focus on there. In my experience, have you seen the same thing?
Absolutely.
On that kind of that people part, bringing hearts and minds.
And it is a conversation which has gone into 3 different aspects. One is about, do we need change transformation because we are having just system integrator coming in and doing the development work, or maybe we need a digital transformation and we need a change transformation, and it's quite in a big scale. So we have to balance that out in terms of, yes, the transformation can happen with the change elements, with the change network, the change agents that can be delivered, working with people, identifying, assessing the impact on the business, impact on the changes. If we have not identified that, then it leads to a difficult conversation later on. So yes, we have seen that. I mean, again, depending on the industry, some industries are more focused and more open. Some industries are very closed, and you can have that conversation, but you need to repeat that vision, repeat that benefits that we are going to deliver on a regular basis, because it's unless everyone gets that, maybe day one you have that vision, but everybody doesn't link that vision or the benefit to the ways of working, to the work I'm doing currently in my division or my department. So how you can take that vision, break it down in terms of how is it linking it up into the work that I'm doing on a regular basis.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. No, and it's it's kind of in a sense refreshing to hear that kind of view on things as well. So I mean, looking at the book, Lipi, we talked about the fact that you co-authored building a digital future that's available to purchase. So we've probably just crammed in there in sort of 10 minutes just that kind of really high level overview of what digital transformation is. How did this book come to be? You mentioned that you got the time to write it during the COVID lockdown period, but what does this book offer businesses, Lipi? Talk us through that a little bit, if you can.
Yeah, sure. And it's interesting about how we started with the book, and we started with a journey that we will be writing the book about the experience that we have got from the industry, working with the industry. And it is compounded by the fact that we have reached out to many industry leaders and got to interview them, got their views embedded in how they are working currently. So we have got lots of case studies in the book, which is talking about how they have taken their challenges and how using in a different ways, and obviously Dynamics 365 as a solution, as a technology piece, but what it delivers, what it can cater for. Whether you are talking about the customer engagement or whether it's a ERP program, you're talking about finance and operations, supply chain, or the retail. I think the Dynamics has got the solution for everything, but it is about how you are delivering that digital transformation, and the capabilities are there, but you need to embed that within the preparing the organization. So we have gathered lots of insights from talking to people across the globe and across different sectors. So it's my experience and Vinny's experience working in the industry, compounded with the fact that we have spoken to so many industry leaders and thought leaders, and included all their thoughts and how we can improve upon when we are leading a digital transformation. So it will help anyone thinking about digital transformation but might not have pinned down on the fact which technology you want to use. So the book will give you a high overview about what Dynamics 365 is all about, and also Power Platform is all about. But it's no means talking a technical aspect of the solution. It's more about what are the benefits and an overview of the product. Then you also have a view about the organization readiness, and it's about the 5 cornerstone, what you need to prepare, where you need to prepare, what you need to think about starting a digital program, digital transformation program, what you need to think about to prepare within the organization, thinking about your own workforce, whether you are going to do that internally within yourself or whether you are going to bring in a delivery partner who will be working alongside with you, not just on the solution, maybe on the change and transformation as well. And what level of change and transformation that you would need to bring in, whether it's like very, you have got the capabilities internally and you want to use it just on the advisory approach, or maybe it is like more come and deliver that for you. So again, it's a balancing act, and you know your organization, so you need to understand the leadership, team buy-in, sponsorship, all of those elements that need to be, have a proper buy-in before you start the digital transformation and go into that journey.
No, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. So I noticed, just to pick up on a few things there. So you do specifically call out, obviously, the Power Platform and Microsoft Dynamics as 2 kind of core technical components to, the obviously your background and how you've come to write this book. Do those components play a heavy part in this book, Lipi, or are there more generic terms, like kind of multi-cloud or multi-cloud platform? How does the book address those kind of things?
It is generic. We wanted to target, talk about one particular piece of the technology. Hence, we have covered the Dynamics and Power Platform. But irrespective of any kind of technology, whether you want to implement SAP or whether you want to go for Oracle, anything on the cloud platform, and it's more about how you want to prepare the organization about. So it can apply to any kind of technology, not specific to Dynamics. And since we have been talking about transforming your business, how you want to prepare your organization, how you want to prepare the program roadmap, how you want to create that kind of synergy. And also, when you are actually working with people, processes, and technology, finally, once the transformation is almost there, you also have to think about how you want to keep your business running, keeping the lights on. And at the same time, you have to think about what happens after you have, let's say, implemented our technology into the business, how you want to continuously improve upon and also support the existing solution that you have delivered, how you will continuously support and get the user adoption into that transformation, into that piece. Yes. That's where I would say so it can be applied across any technology.
So I mean, as you've been talking us through that, Lipi, I've been flicking through these couple of slides now in terms of, I mean, this is the structure of the book and how you've got it formatted in the sense of, the kind of the key areas that the book goes into. So I mean, just to kind of reiterate back through some of these kind of the parts that you've structured the book into. So, building that case for change, understanding the motivations and kind of the business justifications and the drivers for wanting to go onto this, cloud journey, because arguably there possibly still are businesses and individuals out there that are, why cloud? Why should we even worry about the cloud? Why should that play a part? And I mean, have you got any advice for people that may be in that mindset, or businesses that may still be, in that traditional sense and not really concerned? Should they be concerned about cloud services?
I think if you are going for a product and to look out for what particular product you're going for, from Microsoft perspective, I would say that it's very seamless, robust, cost management is there. If you have this Azure, the subscription, and the cost management is really, you can have a transparency. Everything is at one place. Whether you should really worry about it, and every organization should, because it's a concern about the security. But look at all the features that has been added by Microsoft, so and the plan around it. So, and you get to have that product continuously growing because the upgrade system is ongoing, and you have got 2 upgrades that comes every year. So you can everything. I mean, sometimes what has happened in past in traditional way is like we have implemented a solution, we have done whole transformation within the business, and after 2 years or 3 years, so maybe a new system has come up, and the features might run out on the business model, the process might have changed, and it takes another, the incremental cost for improving upon the system that also you need to think about. But whereas we talk about the Microsoft product, it's evergreen because you get the upgrades and it's pushed through. There might be major upgrades that you need to think about, continue regression testing about the full functionality. But most of it, if you follow through the principles, the guiding principles, then it's quite easy to maintain. It's seamless, it's robust, and it facilitates lots of functionalities that are already inbuilt. Some of the customizations or configuration that you need to think about, that is very much towards your focus around your sector or your industry. But I think, again, you need to implement a solution, not customizing everything. So you have to take about a guiding principle, about an approach of implement an 80-20 principle, where you think about 80% comes from the product and 20% you think about, yes, maybe it is focused too much around our business, our processes, but don't go too much away from the product. And that's where it brings a lot of value.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting concept, I guess, because one of the analogies somebody described to me really about this whole shift to cloud technology was almost like looking at the Industrial Revolution and how at one stage, when, things like generators and people were able to produce their own electricity using kind of a generator and a combustion engine to generate that. And they all had these generators dotted around, which is representative of our own little private data centers across our organizations.
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, there was this big pull to actually shift all the power creation to big power plants, on a massive scale, and then have a distribution network of power out to businesses. Now, that effectively is what cloud data centers are and it was a great analogy to kind of explain that, you've gone from this decentralized model of everybody operating their own kit and, for lots of those reasons you've just described there, Lipi, but now all of a sudden we've got the scale and capability and rich feature set, like you say, the ability to kind of use those evergreen services, which, look, I guess you may today not understand that you might want some of those services, but if you're consuming them, then you've got them to hand. So, I mean, it's cool to see, and that's how you kind of structured the book, is kind of talking through each of these areas to kind of help people understand how they may be applicable to their own businesses, I guess, Lipi. Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's the product is scalable. It's, as I said, it's robust. So you need to think about what are the key elements you need to bring in day one. And you might, the reason I was said is about evergreen, because you might not need to bring in all the facilities, all the capabilities on day one, because you have to think about the user adoption too. So hence it's about, you need a product which is continuously, evergreen, and you can plan your roadmap around the product. You can plan your roadmap around your processes as well as people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That makes complete sense there. I mean, we talked a lot about that kind of people, process and technology, which a lot of guests I've had on this show, and certainly over the last few years, that whole term of Devops has come to be, kind of like, I don't know, sometimes it's one of those words that people love or hate. I don't know how you find it, Lipi, but certainly when you mention the term Devops, it kind of, it's a bit of a Marmite term. You either love it or you hate it. So I don't know how you feel about it, but certainly, I mean, how does DevOps play into the journey that you're describing there in the book, and kind of where it leads to with consumption of these cloud services, I guess?
So it's very interesting. You touched upon the DevOps, and I would say it's any kind of product. If you know the product, then it's really nice to use it, and you can leverage the capabilities, and you can use that for any kind of discussion you have. What I find with DevOps is it's really useful and very powerful, and depending how you're going to use it. So most of the time, the organization, we're trying to do the agile ways of working, which is like take the whole, implementation. Don't try to do everything at one time, but try to break it down, break it into small iteration. And in agile way, you will call it as a sprint. But in the Azure pipeline, what you will have is all your requirements, or in the scope items or the product backlog, we call it product backlog, all the requirements you have got one area one repository, and using that, you can have any kind of conversation with any kind of stakeholders. And the reason why I say it's powerful, because as you are rolling out something, or you are in a digital transformation, rolling out the digital transformation in an organization, depending on whether it's a small, medium, or large scale organization, you would have varied stakeholders. And hence, it's very important to go through that journey about the requirements. If I have started a requirement on day one, and maybe with continuous discussion and dialogue and workshop session, the requirement A might have changed to requirement C now. And it's in one place. Whether the developers working on it get to know about it, whether the tester testing on it get to know about it. And again, the suite has got the test suite embedded within the Devops, so you can also test. You can add your test scripts within that, and you can test through it. You can also do a lot of, the check-ins are also there. The check-ins for the code is also there in the Devops. So it's a repository, I would say, where you want to have that conversation with the product owner, with the stakeholders, or want to see what the status is, rather than having conversation or having long gathering meeting, because you can store the estimates, you can store the products, you can store the prioritization of the product items, and then you can package them up, and you can say these are the things that we are going to release, and so on. So cycle. So it's kind of, for me, I see it as a very powerful tool if you can use it in the right way. And obviously there are lots of dashboard views that you can regularly view and watch and observe and monitor.
Yeah, absolutely. And just some of the things you mentioned there about that whole kind of process for, looking at it from a technology perspective, that technology part of DevOps, in terms of, yes, there are cloud offerings to actually control, like you say, those code repositories, those, project boards, with those test plans, the continuous integration and continuous deployment pipelines that can be created to kind of do. But that is, I don't know how you find customers you're dealing with at the moment, but that is either a skill that your business has at the moment because they are doing some form of software development, or in a lot of cases where they businesses may not necessarily be a tech company.
That's right.
They may either outsource some of those things. They may just have an internal operational team that actually just kind of keeps the business IT systems fed and watered and up and running and working reliably. Do you see any kind of messages that kind of cross over between that operations world into this kind of new world of dev, in terms of using these tool sets that have traditionally been more centered around that software development world? Have you noticed any patterns there, Lipi?
I do see that, and you're right. I mean, some businesses might not have the capability of learning DevOps. When we are talking about digital transformation, they might be interested in the transformation phase. And that seems like a new skill for a business to adopt. Right, but it can be. It is very intuitive, and it can be done in a very coaching kind of a way, with a very little guidance around that. And it's not necessary the business to utilize the Azure in a heavy way. It is more about how the technology piece is delivered and released and managed, and maybe the IT of the organization would need to get involved, not the business side. And again, the SI who would be delivering the solution might get involved and keeping everything in one place, so that everything can be managed, and the governance side of things need to be managed in that way. So I see, yes, there is a crossover. The business might not have that kind of skill, but business can be trained on a very little coaching that can happen, and it can be managed by the SI that delivering it. So it's kind of a balance again, in terms of how much the business need to learn. Maybe not necessarily, but they might need to know the information. They might need to know about which items they need to focus more on, and that's where the view is there for them.
But I guess it's back to your point that you mentioned earlier. It's about bringing those people with you as part of that process. It's bringing people with you, and I guess that's a real example of, certainly, from my experience, I've seen a lot of businesses aren't there, in terms of what DevOps is and how DevOps can actually work for their organization, because either they're not a software development company, they're not a tech company, and so haven't invested in that over the years, or they've got that traditional kind of view of the world in terms of IT, and the skills they've got are more traditional. I mean, it's always difficult to know which words to use, but I use the word traditional because they're, I think really from my point of view, when you move to cloud, it is about learning some of these new ways. And again, I use the word new. They're not new ways. They've been around for a long, long time. It's just they may be new to a lot of companies, but it just seems that it's more prevalent now today. Certainly when you talk about cloud services and that agile way, like you say, using Git repos to kind of act as that central repository that you can have conversation with non-technical stakeholders of a project. It's certainly, and I guess that's what you're alluding to, Lipi, in terms of bringing people with you.
And I would just would like to highlight one more point, because yes, having that conversation with the stakeholders, but in this days when everybody is working remotely and working from home, it's really useful to have everything in one place. And think about an organization where it is like if the back office is in outsourced in a different country or maybe a nearshore country. So you might be having the workforce across different 3 countries working towards one achievement, one goal. So you can only achieve that having everything centrally. Otherwise, things can float around in emails, Excel spreadsheet. And we have gone past that stage where you would like to do that everything in an Excel spreadsheet. So it's the new ways of working, yes, but it delivers a benefit to you. Why not use it?
But absolutely, and it's touching on that process part of DevOps, then, isn't it? It's using the technical solutions that are available to now reimagine business process, I guess, the ways of working. So, I mean, it's brilliant to see, to be honest, Lipi, how much you've gone into this book. So, I mean, let us know where can we actually get the book from if we wanted to read more.
Yeah, if you can get order the book from Amazon, and if you want to reach out and talk about any particular aspect, feel free to reach out to me, or Vinny is my co-author, so we are happy to have a one-to-one conversation with you to talk about anything you would like to know more about, or if we can help you.
Sure thing. No, absolutely. Well, no, this has been, a superb chat, Lipi, to be honest. It's been great to see, and get that kind of view of the world in terms of, I think sometimes when you're a technical person, you are very much down in the depths of a technical solution and making that technically work. But, it's about having that kind of broader view of that entire journey that doesn't necessarily just touch those technical aspects. It is very much around the business process, the actual winning of finance people, the people that are going to be paying for this in businesses. There's lots of different stakeholders, and I guess a book like this kind of helps set the scene, I guess. For those kind of things.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's setting the scene. It's about thinking about where do you want to move. And we have the aspiration that any kind of business students who want to embark upon the journey of, the career move, they can also think about, understanding how the digital roadmap and about the digital transformation, how does it work? So yes, I mean, anybody from the industry who want to go with the digital transformation with Dynamics or any other technology, and it serves the purpose for everyone, really.
No, absolutely, that's great. Well, we'll flick back over to our 2-camera view, and there's always a question I like to ask every guest that comes on the show, Lipi. We're getting up to the end of the show now, but there's always one big open-ended question I like to ask is that where do you think we're going with technology? What are the next big bets for you over the next sort of 5 to 10 years, Lipi?
Very interesting question. And I guess the way we have been looking so far into technology and transformation is more about, how we can solve the business problem. But the way we are moving towards is how we can proactively stop certain points. And I'm talking about artificial intelligence, proactive, rather than reactive to any kind of pain points, but more proactive and find out the trends where we can deliver more value and more benefit. And obviously, AI has got a big part to do with that, but and it can touch upon any kind of industry. So some work has already started, but I think over the period of time, more maturity will come through that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you know what, Lipi? I think I should probably just label that last question of the show. Do you agree that we should all start learning AI now? Because I think certainly for the last 10 or so guests I've had on the show, the answer that's cropping up a lot is AI. It seems to be the place to be at the moment. Certainly,
Absolutely.
you know, if you want to get ahead of the game, I'm completely with you. And it's such a massively interesting area, don't you think? You know, to kind of get working. Have you had any experience with it yourself, Lippy? Have you got any anecdotes on that part of the
We have
industry?
started working with certain area, but not exactly fully. We are trying to open up more on the AI side of things, and I
Yeah,
would like
yeah.
to not only resolve the business problems, so we can solve a lot of the household problems, so maybe the social problems with AI. If we can see
Hmm.
what are the areas, like the people going to college, what are the trends happening, how we can bring that information in education industry. So I think it's a big opportunity depending on where and how we are going to use it.
Yeah, absolutely, and you know, and it's just fantastic to see that, you know, you as well as other people have kind of all seen this same trajectory of where the industry is going over time. But Lippy, I mean, it's been fantastic to have a chat with you. Thanks so much for joining me today. I mean, are there any other parting last words you'd like to have a chat around now before we call an end to this show?
Yeah, it was awesome, and I really thoroughly enjoyed, John. So yeah, look forward to catch up some other time when you have
Yeah.
managed to if there are some other feedback, or maybe we can feature something else. But yeah, it was a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
No, likewise, Lippy, and of course, for the people that are watching, all the links and things that we've talked about now, link to the book, they'll all be in the text below this video or in the associated article. So please do, as Lippy says, if you've liked this, leave some comments. Obviously, if you need to reach out, Lippy and Vinny are available anytime across Twitter, LinkedIn. Again, the links will be all below. But right, it just leaves me to say thanks so much for being an awesome guest, Lippy. I really look forward to this episode broadcasting, which it is now. It's recording, but it'll be broadcast. But yeah, we'll keep in touch, and I'll let you know for any feedback. But no, thanks so much for being an awesome guest, Lippy.
Thank you. Bye for now.
See you soon.